Hey, everybody. So my name is Scott, and I'm here with Andrew and Gaurav from the team. And over the years, we've had many ways of hosting applications in Azure. I go back to think about even early app service, virtual machines. But in many cases, you still have to modify your app in some way. And what we want to show folks today is how you can take an application and almost not change anything at all, and just copy it from on-prem to the cloud and get it to work. And that's what App Service MI is all about. And so with that, let's click to the next slide, Andrew, and let's talk about the agenda.
Okay. Hi, everyone. So today we're going to start off by talking through some of the challenges of migration. And we're going to look at a couple of different types of applications and scenarios, and some of the problems that we find with migration. We'll have a look at that through a demo. Then we'll have a look at how we are addressing the migration challenges with managed instance on App Service. And then finally, we'll wrap up with a recap and some next steps. We've got some invitations for you to go and try some stuff out and go and do some more investigation with your own applications. Back in 2023, Gartner stated that more than 50% of applications are still on premises. So that's a huge amount of applications that are still running, whether it's in your data center, in somebody else's data center, or even, proverbially underneath your desk somewhere in a dusty corner. But they're the things that keep your organizations running, and they're critical to your business.
And they're likely on things like .NET Framework or early versions of Java and so on as well. So.
Yeah, and even stuff earlier than that.
And I talk to customers today that have stuff even older than that. Crystal Reports may be an example of something.
Yes.
So let's have a look at challenges. So we've grouped these into two main areas, and I've also given the Ignite crowd and our history before Ignite and TechEd and all the different events that we've ever done. We tend to land in a couple of camps. So you've got your IT professionals very comfortable with infrastructure and servers. And then we've got our developers very comfortable with application code. Now, we have folks like myself in a previous life. I have a foot in both, and I'm pretty comfortable with both areas. But often, when we're dealing with server administrators, they know the infrastructure really, really well. That's their fine art. That's what they build. That's what they craft. And so they're very comfortable with scripting out dependencies, building out networks, building out infrastructure, et cetera. But what they don't know very much about is the applications and what the application domain is supposed to do and what the functionality is and what it necessarily needs down to a fine grain. Developers, on the other hand, when they've got access to the source code, they know it like the back of their hand. They may know that in this corner of this class here, there's some technical debt they wish they could have cleared up 5 years ago, but they know it still exists. They know it needs to have certain dependencies and how it calls out. And so they really know that really tightly. And so when you've got the source code, sometimes you can make changes, but not all the time. On the flip side, what happens if as an organization you've bought a packaged solution, something that was bought in-house, maybe it's off-the-shelf product, or you've contracted somebody to go and build something out many years ago, and it actually underpins your organization. In this instance, you can't make changes. You might be able to make slight tweaks to config, but you can't just outright change things. There might be a lack of internal knowledge. So if ever you've read things like the Phoenix Project, you might not have a Brett in your organization that can actually tell you where everything is and how it all runs. And that creator may no longer actually be working in the software industry, or they may not be contracted to your business. So how do you really work around it?
I'll add to what you said. Many times, even with source code, you might not have anybody that knows how that source code works because they moved on to some other job. It's a 10-year-old application. I see this all the time talking to customers. They're like, we don't even have people that know how these apps work anymore. We have the source code, but we still have this same problem you're mentioning here, which is the creator is no longer around.
Yeah, maybe you've got like an old ASMX web service with your WSDL, and you're like, I can't remember how that works. I remember in a previous life, but I don't know anymore. So let's try and group all of those migration and modernization challenges up again. So we've got application dependencies. As Scott calls out, something like Crystal Reports is endemic through a lot of organizations, and it's something that customers really need to be able to go out and generate reports. And if you spend hours and months building those reports and those reporting libraries, it's not something that as a business you're willing to throw out and redevelop. It's going to take time. Might be things that you installed into the GAC. really old .NET framework, early .NET framework, you relied heavily on the GAG. Maybe it's a component library from our friends over at DevExpress or Telerik or Infogistics, all of these different companies that I can recall from my history. Maybe you rely on different configuration systems. Maybe you do actually call out to the registry. You read and write registry keys, and you pull in settings that way. You need local or network file I/O. So you actually do write to the local disk, and you need to be able to do that through a drive letter. And if it's an example of an application you bought off your shelf, you can't easily change that to a new NFS mount or something else that we provide you in cloud. You can't easily plug in, say, Azure Storage as a provider there. Reduced access and changes in tooling is often a challenge that customers face when they move to platforms like App Service or PaaS. We don't, traditionally allow you access to the infrastructure. You can't bring along your IIS tools or Event View or something that you've built in-house. And often that's a bit jarring, who moved my cheese and how can I do the things that I'm used to and really proficient with? In-process session state is a problem whether you're on-prem and you're trying to scale, or whether you're in the cloud and you're trying to go over to hyperscale. So how do we provide a home that helps you to be able to migrate these applications and run at a single instance with high reliability until you can focus on that if you need to? You don't always need to. And often migration takes too long. We've heard from lots and lots of customers that just tell us that, this app over here that was core to our business, it's just going to take me 8 to 10 to 12 months to actually do the changes or to migrate that, and I just can't get the return on investment. So it's not quick ROI. They want to be focused with a solution where they can actually migrate quickly and then focus their efforts elsewhere on the bits that they want to add value to their business.
So I have a question.
Mm-hmm.
So we're talking about app service managed instance. Why not use a virtual machine? In the case of a virtual machine, I do have access to all these things, and so I'd love to hear.
So one of the benefits of coming to App Service is we have a shared platform. We have shared front ends and all of our infrastructure to be able to handle web applications at scale. If you code down a VM, you're in the situation of having to replicate some of that. So you immediately have to build out multiple instances, deal with scaling those out, dealing with gold images. You then need to put in front of those some sort of load balancer, have multiple instances of that. You come to App Service, you just focus on your application. Let us take care of all that infrastructure. Let us take care of the patching for you and the maintenance of those runtimes. That's the benefit.
So you're going to patch the OS for me and you're going to patch my runtime for me?
Yep, we're going to patch whatever comes in the box in terms of the OS. That gets regularly done. We're going to patch the frameworks. So a security update comes out for .NET Framework. That gets patched for you automatically. You don't even have to think about it. It's a platform benefit.
So with a virtual machine, I get all that control, but I have to rebuild all that infrastructure, as you said, myself.
Yep.
In this world, I can still now, with App Service MI, I can touch the file system, touch the registry, install GAC, things into the GAC,
yep.
But I don't have to pay all the prices of being in a VM.
Yep, so you get
Awesome.
much lower total cost of ownership because you're focused heavily on your applications and the benefit that you can bring to your application.
Cool.
Let's have a look. Nope, sweet, there we go. So here we have a scenario, like the second set of challenges that I presented. I've been handed this application. It's been sitting on a web server underneath a colleague's desk for 10 years, but it's absolutely critical to the business and I need to move it. I don't have any of the source code. I don't even have the debug binaries, so I can't get into it. My only choices are to use a disassembler and to be able to peek back in and crawl through all the classes to find things. So I've taken a first step at migration, and I've published this straight to App Service with App Service as you knew it up until yesterday morning when we made some announcements. So as you see here, I have the flexibility that we have with App Service. I've got all of the abilities to be able to scale, to be able to add authentication, backups, etc. All of the benefits that you get out of the box. However, if I browse to the app, I've immediately got some problems. So we've got an error up here in the top corner. Now, having disassembled these DLLs, I know that that is actually using a registry key to actually get my connection string to the database. We don't allow you in App Service Windows, as things stand today, to read and write from the registry in that manner. We don't allow you to set values. Okay, that's a problem, so I'm going to have to make a code modification to an app that I don't have access to the code for to be able to change that. Okay, I'm starting to get forced to that IaaS solution. Don't like this. Let's go into the category share report. Oh, I've got here broken image. Again, when I was able to disassemble those DLLs, I found that that's actually making a GDI call. Again, something in the App Service Sandbox we traditionally block out. And then the canonical export to PDF. Now, some of you in the audience may be saying, yeah, but my PDF library works in App Service. Not everybody's does. Crystal Reports, for example, doesn't. And in this example, neither does this one. Because this one underneath the hood is actually making calls out to system.drawing, something that we've seen for years with PDF and reporting libraries, that's one of the problems that we have. This is not exhaustive. This is just a quick example of some of the scenarios that we find when customers migrate applications to App Service. And one of the bits of feedback that we've heard with this kind of example is App Service Sandbox gives us a headache because we can't replicate that on-prem. I can't take the App Service Sandbox and run it in my environment inside in my on-premises data center or on my desk. So what are we going to do about that? We are pleased to announce Managed Instance on Azure App Service, a new set of features for customers looking to greatly accelerate their move to PaaS. We allow you to preserve your Windows dependencies. You bring them in form of an install script. So you have an install script inside a zip. You'll be able to upload those into storage and go through and install all of those for you. And we're going to go through some of those in a demo shortly. By being inside the App Service environment, the platform, you unlock scale. So immediately your App Service plan, for example, on a premium tier can go out to 30 instances. You don't have to provision those. You don't have to go through CapEx. You don't have to forecast that, hey, I need another one and I need to go and rack it and I need to go and get it ready. You get enterprise-level scale security. So everything can be secured via managed identity. Your VNet integrated. You can use your network security groups. And because you're inside the Azure ecosystem, now you can take advantage of other services like Azure AI, Azure SQL, Azure Application Insights, Monitor. Huge amount of opportunities for you. A managed instance is deployable on Premium v4. It's our newest and greatest SKU that we have within the App Service platform. It was only GA in September. It's on the newest hardware and at a really, really good price point. The canonical architecture of an app service web app running on managed instance on Azure App Service is that you would have the app, you're using an install script from storage account, secured via managed identity. All of your assets and your dependencies are inside that zip file. We pull it into the instance, we run it whenever we spin that up. Equally, when you scale out, we make sure it's a carbon copy each time. You use managed adapters for registry and for storage access, so you can read and write to the registry, all backed and secured by Key Vault. And then you can deploy this via ARM, so therefore you have all of the tools, all of the reliability for a desired state each time. Equally, you can put this plan directly inside your VNet, giving you access to other resources inside your virtual network. And for the first time ever, by being inside that VNet, we're allowing you to remote desktop via Azure Bastion directly to your App Service plan instances, something we've never, ever allowed you to do with App Service. Yeah. We've been running private preview of these features for a few months, and even before that, some early previews. 𝗬𝗲𝗀𝗀𝗶𝗀𝗀𝗲𝗀 from TCS, our friends over at Tata Consultancy Services, had this to say. They successfully tested Azure App Service Managed Instance for classic .NET Framework applications. During that private preview, and experienced firsthand how this new capability provides much-needed flexibility to leverage the legacy dependencies. And one of the things that I wanted to call out from the wider quote is that customers now have the best of both worlds and can accelerate their migration to Azure. So with this offering, we're really trying to get to the stage where from 0 or very minimal code changes, you can migrate your applications. So we go from potentially 8 months or longer migration projects to much, much smaller, maybe even hours, maybe even days. And now I'm going to hand over to Gaurav. He's going to take us through a detailed demo of solving a lot of those challenges.
Okay, so we start by going to Azure Marketplace and search for a new template called as managed instance. Just type managed instance, or for that matter, you can even type web apps. Once you do that, now you see there's a new template called as web app for managed instance. Once you click that, you see this experience. Now this seems very, very similar because we are trying
to zoom just a little in there. It's tiny, kind of small.
Oh.
Zoom the browser up a little bit. Thank you.
Yeah. So you start by giving it a subscription. You give a resource name. So you select the resource group where you want to create all your resources. And remember, as part of this plan, we are eventually creating a web app as well. So you need to give web app a name. Let me call it BRK102 demo app. And now you select the runtime. Now you might notice that the options for the runtimes are a little lesser than what you might have already experienced on App Service. The reason behind this is these are the runtimes which are installed out of the box on the underlying instance. Having said that, it's not that you can only have these runtimes. If you have your own runtime, you can bring them, install them using the configuration script, and I will talk about that in a bit. So for this demo, I'm going to select 4.8. And again, for the preview, you are currently in these regions, but we will be rolling out to additional regions pretty fast. Now, in terms of the app service plan name, that's auto-generated. If you want, you can change it as well. And now when it comes to SKU, as Andrew pointed out, this is only available on PV4 and PMV4. So I select SKU. Now you can also have zone redundancy if you want. Now this is where the new experience kicks in. You have the concept of configuration script. What that means is whatever dependencies, whatever configurations that you require us to make on your behalf, you give us the script, you give us the installers, and we do it. Now, just to give you an example, this is the configuration script I'm talking about. This is a PowerShell script, and that's what we currently support. So what this configuration script is doing, this is actually installing fonts on the underlying instance, and this is also enabling an SMTP server role, because that's what my application requires. So yes, you can even have a SMTP server role on managed instance on App Service now. So once you have your installation script and you have all your components and dependencies, you just create a zip file. And then you go ahead and upload the zip file to a storage account. You can see I've already uploaded a zip file over here. It's called component install.zip. Now I come here, I first select the storage account. I then select the container name, and then I need to give the name of the zip file. Now in this scenario, the zip file name is not loading. The simple reason is that the entire communication between the app service plan that's on the managed instance and the Azure storage account is secured using managed identity. Because remember, for this entire offering, security is front and center of entire feature. And you'll see as I move along. So I'm going to type the name. And then I'll select an identity. Now, you have always been able to use a system identity or a user-assigned identity with your web app. Now what we are doing here is a default identity for the plan. So what that means is every time my plan is talking to any other Azure resource, that's the identity it is going to use. So this is the identity that we will use to go talk to the storage account, download the zip file, and then do what we have to do. So I'll go ahead and select the identity. Now remember, what we are creating is a web app, so your source code still could be in GitHub. Give us the repo URL, and we will get the code. And yet another new experience. This is about enabling the virtual network integration. You could always do that for your web apps. Now you can do that for the plan itself. If you want public access, you switch it on, and then you say that, yes, I do require VNet integration with my plan. Specifically for the scenario where you need to do an RDP, because now RDP that we allow is only via secure Azure Bastion. That's where you require a subnet and a VNet, so your app should be injected into the same VNet. So I select the VNet. I now go ahead and select the subnet. Remember, when you select the subnet, it should be delegated to server farms. I now click Review. Once the validation is done, once I click Create, what's going to happen behind the scene is we will provision the instance, we will talk to the storage account, we'll download the zip file, we'll unpack it, and we'll go through the installation steps that you have given in the PowerShell scripts and start running them through. So in the interest of time, I've already created a plan. If I go to the App Service plan over here, this is the managed instance on Azure App Service plan. As you can see here, I again have a new menu blade. It's called configuration. Now this is exactly the same set of script that I had provided. And now here is the new concept. Andrew spoke about you can create mounts for your web app. So what we are enabling here is that if your app requires access to, let's say, G:, H:, or a K: mount.fs or any such files, file path, you can actually do that. How you do it is you click on New Storage Mount, and now we allow you to mount 3 types of storage mounts. If you need a persistent and a shared storage, you do it via Azure File Shares. What if I have a file server maybe within Azure or maybe even in your data center? As long as it is reachable over the virtual network, you can even give us a UNC path, and we will let you use your custom file share as well as part of a storage mount. Or if you just want a temporary file mount, switch to local. You give us a drive letter, and we will mount a temporary mount for your app service plan. For this demo, I'm going to use Azure Files. I'll give it a name. And then I need to select the storage account where the actual mount exists. And now I select the file share. Now keywords. Again, as I said, security is paramount to this feature. So what we are doing here is the actual connection string for the file share is a secret in the key vault. So I go ahead and select the key vault. And I can now select the secret name. And now I give the drive letter and the path. It could be a drive letter only, or it could be a drive letter and a path after that. So maybe I can just say L:\mount.fs. So the idea here is if your web application depends on, let's say, a hard-coded path for logs or for any reason where you are downloading or uploading content, and it was called L:\mount.fs or K:\mount.fs or anything, you can't do that without having to make a change. So that's the large idea why we are enabling storage mounts on the plan itself. And remember, these mounts would be shared across all the apps within the plan. So I'm going to come out of this because I already have few mounts.
Gaurav,
Yep.
what's the local one?
The local one is all about the temporary. So if you just want a temporary mount, but remember, if you have a temporary mount and for any reason, if you go ahead and patch, or if the instance is restarted, the data that's there on the mount will be wiped off. So if you need a persistent and a shared storage, it's either custom or Azure Files. Now, what if you need registry keys? So that's the reason the app that Andrew showed failed, because it is having its connection string stored in the registry settings. Again, just click on New. Give it the path. This is the actual path within the registry hive where your key will get created. And remember, again, we have the key vault. The reason in this scenario is the actual registry key value is a secret within the key vault. So I give it a name, and now I select the key vault secret. So what's going to happen behind the scene is when we create this registry setting, we will get the reference of the secret, we will load the actual value, and create the registry setting for you. And the registry setting could be string or dword.
And equally, if you change that, we suck it in as well, just like we do in app settings for web apps already, or certificates, we still get that same functionality.
And for the very first time, as Andrew pointed out, you could now do secure RDP into the underlying instance. And that's all using Azure Bastion. Now, on this page, the most important thing to note is you do have a checkbox against allow remote desktop. So the idea here is that you may have a Bastion within the virtual network, but if you still don't want to allow a remote desktop to this plan, you just uncheck the box, and that's done. Now, what I have already configured the remote desktop, how do I access it? Head over to a new experience again. It's called instances now, and this is all at the plan level, remember. Now, you see two options here. First is restart. Now, for any reason, if I need to restart the underlying instance, just click on restart. We'll restart the instance, and we'll even reimage the instance, download the zip file, rerun all the installation steps. And what if you want to connect securely? Just click on connect and see the magic happens. Now you're just doing a secure RDP into the underlying app service instance. Now, before I move any further into the RDP experience, a quick word of advice and something very critical. Any change if you make using the RDP session, remember it's temporary. Meaning if you do an installation or if you do any tweak to the settings, there will always be scenarios where either you will restart the instance, or we may just patch and restart the instance for maintenance. In that scenario, any changes that you have done will be wiped off. So what you need to do is, for persistent and durable changes, or rather repeatable changes, you should always and always use installation script. And give us all the steps so that every time you scale up or you scale out, or if there is a restart, we will pretty much replay all the steps that you did while provisioning. Now, as you can see here, that I have all my mounts that I created, the H:, the K: mount FS. Now, what if I want to see the logs for the installation script? Head over to C: install script, and you can actually see the logs here.
But that's not the only way, right?
Yes. If you also want to see the adapter logs, so all the registry keys and all the mounts that we create, we call them managed adapters. So if you want to see the logs of the managed adapters, head over to adapters. So we have the log for adapters over here. Now again, what if I just want to reconfirm that my registry key got done? Yes, just head over to, because that's the path I created within software, that's the registry key. And this is the actual value that we have pulled in from Azure Key Vault secret. I just want to validate that the SMTP configuration got done. Use MMC plugins. Yes, you can actually validate that the SMTP configuration is done, and now your app can use it. And finally, you even have access to IS Manager. So remember, if you just want to verify, validate, or do a quick troubleshooting, that's where you would use RDP, because now you have access to all the underlying features, even at the OS level. And that's where, if you want a specific Windows feature for your app, you can do it using configuration scripts. Now, if I move back to the app, Now remember, these are all the steps that you would have performed at the time of migration. Now once this is done, beyond that what you get is the standard app service experience. You remember the app you just saw and it was broken. Now this is exactly the same app that we have migrated without making even a single line of code change. If I go to the same report, yeah, the internet is a bit slow, sorry for that. So now you see the bitmap coming up. If I now click export to PDF, it will generate a PDF. So what we have done is we are here enabling you to go ahead and migrate and modernize your web apps without making any code change. And again, if I go back to the portal, you see this is the standard app service portal experience that you are used to. We have made no changes. Pretty much everything that you could do with app service windows, you can do with apps which are on managed instance on Azure App Service.
Can I still scale apps like I could before?
Yes, you can scale up, you can scale out. You still have all the benefits of security, log analytics, slots. You have all the capabilities that you are used to for app service.
Awesome.
Thanks, Gaurav. So we'll do a recap of everything that we've just seen there. So we've brought our dependencies with our application using an installation script. We've used storage mounts for local and remote files, so we've written out the log messages there to a remote storage. You would equally see that the mail messages that were generated on an order actually right now go to a pickup directory, so they go on to the Azure file share. Registry adapters are backed by those key vault secrets so that we have the connection string lit up, and we're able to use familiar tools. So if you have a heavy reliance on using Event Viewer, or you need to use IIS Manager, for example, or an MMC snap-in, often just to verify and validate, you have that flexibility. And you can take advantage of the platform scale and maintenance, as Scott called out. You can scale that application out in a matter of clicks, rather than having to provision all that infrastructure. One other thing that we didn't show, but it's important to call out on the logs, those log files are actually exportable to Azure Monitor. So you can have the adapter logs out as part of our platform logs and console logs straight out to Log Analytics. And finally, because you're inside Azure App Service and inside the Azure ecosystem, it's far easier to modernize and expand that application value with AI.
Oh, so you said AI, that means you have another demo?
Yeah, we have. We're not done that yet. OK, let's get into that now. So we have this modern agentic app. And you'll see here that we have the bleeding edge. So we have a fashion store app service, which is, in this example, an Aspire app. So we've got one team within our organization doing some cool and bleeding edge development, and they've built this nice new fashion store. And that's working through Foundry with some agents via an orchestrator. So we see at the bottom, we've got agents for the cart manager, for fashion advisor, for content moderator, and we have an agent for inventory manager. Now, the app that we've just shipped and we've just migrated is our inventory manager for the entire organization. Yes, it might be on an older framework, but it actually runs the core of our business, and it's something really valuable. So what we're going to show you now is how you can take a web API that is inside that application already, something you've developed and it's in-house, and expand it by connecting it up through an agent and being able to do some agentic apps directly with using that old legacy application and getting value as you go through a phased modernization approach. So you don't have to, eat the entire universe to modernize and migrate. You can actually do it in phased rollout. Over to you, Gaurav.
OK. So we're inside the Foundry portal. Now, as you can see, there are multiple different agents. And the agent that we are interested in is the inventory manager, because this is the agent which actually communicates with the web API that's hosted on managed instance. And if I scroll down a bit, and I click here and I click on Manage, and you can see here that the audience, or rather the endpoint for this agent that it is pulling the data from, is hosted as a web API on managed instance. And what we have just done is we have got like an open API 3.0 compliant JSON. We have exported it here, and that's it. And now my agent is actually going to communicate and going to perform the entire workflow using a web API that's hosted on managed instance. And very importantly, the entire communication between this API and the agent is all secured using the managed identity. Now again, this is the web app, which is just hosting the entire front end that I'm going to show. And you can see over here that the external inventory URL points to the web API that's hosted on managed instance. Now this is the app I'm talking about. Let me go ahead and have a quick conversation. I'll just say, tell me about denim in size L. Now what's going to happen behind the scene is, this is basically a multi-agentic workflow, and the content moderator agent is now going to branch out into different agents, and it will eventually call the inventory manager agent. It will pull all the data using the inventory web API that's on the managed instance on Azure App Service and get you all the data over here. If I go back, this is all the inventory data that's coming in from the web API that's hosted on managed instance. So what you are seeing on the screen right now is that if you are working on, and I'm sure most of you are, working on modern agentic workflows, but you have an API that's completely usable and functional and critical part of maybe your supply chain, you can now modernize that, deploy it to managed instance on App Service, and use it as part of your agentic workflow.
Thanks, Gaurav. So managed instance on Azure App Service gives you the ability to move applications faster to Azure with minimal code changes. That example, we made 0 code change all the way through. That could be the case for your applications. You may not have to make any changes whatsoever. That's what we're aiming for. And you can reduce your operational overhead and cost of ownership, because instead of having duplicate infrastructure to be able to provide you resiliency, be inside our platform, which that's part of what we build. And 3, you can improve your security posture and AI readiness immediately by being inside our compliant infrastructure and compliant service. Finally, we announced earlier this year the GitHub Copilot app modernization tools. And this can help you modernize and migrate your Java and your .NET applications. One thing that we want to call out here as part of the new capabilities that we're announcing this week is the ability to be able to assess your applications where you have access to the source code against managed instance on Azure App Service. And we will be working with our partners to build that even further. And instead of you getting a long list of things that you must change to move to App Service Windows, for example, now to move to managed instance on Azure App Service, you'll get a lot more cases of, this is fine, this is great for a target on App Service, or you may need to put this into a dependency script, that kind of thing. So we're already working with our partners to make sure that our best-of-class tooling is available to you to help you with your modernization and migration journey. We invite you to try managed instance on Azure App Service. It is now in public preview. As Gaurav mentioned, we're adding regions as fast as we can to give you more scope and opportunity to go and try it. There's some documentation that we've published. It's now inside our Learn cohort for App Service. This evening, we're running a hands-on lab here at Ignite at 6 o'clock, and we also have another run tomorrow at 2:45. So if you want to come and get hands-on with managed instance on Azure App Service, come along. Gaurav and myself will be there with other members of our team to support you. And if you want to catch up on all of the other announcements that we've made about App Service this time at Ignite, please check out our blog. Here's some related sessions. I will call out that BRK116 is happening in this room about 45 minutes after we finish, and that's with Nia, Jordan, and 𝗬𝗲𝗀𝗍, who will go through that wider, large-scale application that we showed just a part of with the legacy inventory API. They're building that all out in that one. And then there's the lab. And also BRK102, which was on this morning, talks more about the Copilot tool that you can use for modernization. We invite you to explore Azure Accelerate, because this is an opportunity for you as organizations to get hands-on access to trusted experts, get some funding to help you with migration and modernization stories, and to be able to succeed. And we have about 5 minutes left. So we'd love to be able to open up to some questions and answers. If you've got a question, please come up and use the mic so that everybody in the room can hear. And we'd love to answer these for you now.